Almost 10 years ago, I graduated from college. I got into my dream job, working at a Fortune 500 company. Initially, everything looked great. I was making more than I ever dreamed of, climbing up the corporate ladder. And my friend said to me, "Paul, you finally made it. You achieved the American dream." But after 6 months into my job, I started to feel the sense of emptiness in my heart. Honestly, I thought this was just a bump in the road, but after 6 months, 9 months, the entire year passed by, and this feeling of emptiness got worse and worse to a point. I just dreaded waking up on Monday morning. All my life, I thought if I got into this dream job, I would experience this ultimate happiness, but it failed to deliver. I remember one night just feeling so depressed and just crying out to God, "God, why am I feeling so empty? Why am I feeling so restless? What is going on with my life?" And as I was making that prayer, I felt God was saying to me, "Paul, you've been asking the wrong questions all your life." Up until that time, everything in my life was about what I wanted. What college I wanted to get into, what job I wanted to have, or what city I wanted to live in. Everything was about me. But never once did I ask God, "God, what is your plan for my life?" The next day, I got to share this story with my mentor, and he said, "Paul, do you realize God has a unique purpose and calling for your life?" For the following several years, I devoured every book I can find on the topic of calling. And this is what I realized. All my life, I thought success was about making lots of money, getting promoted at work, buying a good house, making a name for myself. But I realized success, according to God's definition, is spelled faithful stewardship. Life is about stewarding the calling God has given us in our lives and becoming the best version that God created us to be, instead of constantly just comparing ourselves to others. Maybe you're asking the same question. What is my calling for my life? Well, there's never been a better time than now, right in the middle of a global pandemic, to really think about what our calling is. In the last year, suicide rates have been off the charts. Counseling centers, they can't handle high demand requests. Domestic violence and sexual abuse are ruining the lives of many. And from drive-by burials to FaceTime farewells, many of us for the first time are faced with our own mortality and fragility. So why am I telling you all this? In this specific moment in history, as we face physical and social isolation, financial loss, and threatened health, discovering your calling may actually save your life. Study after study has found a person's sense of purpose and calling to be closely connected to all dimensions of well-being. Compared to those without a sense of calling, those who know their calling are not only happier, but also more satisfied with life, cope more effectively with challenges, and express a stronger sense of meaning and purpose in their lives. Now, before you find your calling, you first need to know what exactly is calling. Is calling for everyone, or just those elite few? Does God have a personal calling for my life? In our time, the word calling has become virtually synonymous with job or occupation. But that's not what it originally meant. A job is a calling only if someone calls you to it and you do it for others rather than for yourself. So here's how I define calling. Calling is God's personal invitation to work on His agenda by unleashing your unique design in ways that are eternally significant. I know that's quite a mouthful, so let me just break this down for you. First, calling means there is a caller. Someone is calling you. You can't really call yourself. And for me, I believe that caller is God. In other words, your calling doesn't start from you. But in our culture today, the world says you can become anything you want to be. Just put in the hard work and passion. But that's quite untrue. You can become only what your caller has created you to be. Second, your calling is for the service of others. Your calling really isn't about personal fulfillment. So instead of asking the question, what do I want to do in my life? A better question may be, what career path should I pursue in which I could contribute the most value to those around me? Instead of asking, what will make me the most money and give me the most status? Perhaps a better question is, how with my gifts, personality, and passions can I be of greatest service to others? Third, your calling is connected to your original design. I believe that God has formed you lovingly and intentionally. You're not just an accident of nature. There is a divine purpose and design that has led up to your existence. And your goal is trying to decipher them. Imagine you're on a treasure hunt or on an archaeological dig. You're searching for clues to what God has already designed in your life. Your original design actually has 4 elements, and at the intersection of them is what I call your vocational sweet spot. So if you ever play tennis, you know what I'm talking about. There is this incredible feeling when you're hitting the racket, the sweet spot. And that's what I got thinking is, what if we have a vocational sweet spot in our lives? So the first element is about your wiring or your personality. Are you an extrovert, introvert, or an ambivert? Do you like to organize and create to-do lists, or do you actually like to do things on the spot? You like to improvise. The thing is, you cannot lead yourself until you know yourself. And if you're not sure how you're wired, I'd recommend taking the first step and taking assessments like Myers-Briggs or Enneagram to really understand your own personality. Because the way in which you are wired tells a lot about your unique calling. Second, consider your gifts and strengths. What is it that people are constantly complimenting you about? We are all born with talents and strengths that distinguish us from others. We simply do some things better than most other people do, and it is important to know what these things are and to lean into them. In fact, research shows that applying our strengths is connected to greater work satisfaction, engagement, and productivity. Third, identify your holy discontent. Holy discontent is this idea that when you look at this broken world around you, what aspect of this broken world breaks your heart that you want to fix it, change it, and leave it better? For Mother Teresa, it was people dying of poverty. For Martin Luther King Jr., it was the racial inequality and injustice. What about you? One of the best ways to find your holy discontent is through intentional exploration and experimentation. Fourth, review your life experiences. Your life is a beautiful story that God is weaving. You want to study your life story by looking at your defining moments that have shaped your life. Your past is actually one of the best signals for informing your future. So while your life may seem like a random and meaningless strands of thread, God is weaving a beautiful tapestry of your life with incredible care, thought, and intent. So if you want to start exploring your calling, this is a good place to start. As a practical next step, maybe in your journal, capture your insights about your personality, gifts, holy discontent, and life experiences, and you'll start to move closer and closer to your sweet spot in life. Remember that calling is not a thing to be discovered once and for all. Living out your calling is a dynamic and continually unfolding process. So let me wrap up with a story that has changed my life. The story is told of Alfred Nobel, who was notorious for inventing the dynamite bomb. But on one day in 1888, Alfred happened to read his own obituary in a newspaper. Now, what happened was Alfred's brother died, but the reporter made a grave mistake, thinking it was Alfred who died instead. And in this article, it portrayed Alfred as this evil man. They called him the merchant of death. And this really caused Alfred to think differently about how to live the remaining part of his life. From that day on, Alfred was determined to change his legacy and find his true purpose. He set aside 95% of his funds. He built a foundation where he awarded people who've made extraordinary contributions to the society. And that's how we get our Nobel Prizes today. Now, what about you? What if you woke up the next day and read your own obituary? What would it say? Would it read the way you wanted to read? Would you have any regrets? Norman Cousins said it best. The tragedy of life is not death. Rather, it is what we allow to die within us while we live. At the end of your life, God will not ask you to show your resume, ask what companies you work for, how many followers you had on social media, or how much money you accumulated. I believe He will ask you one question. Did you live out your calling? Did you live out the purpose for which I created you for? My hope is that you will quit living someone else's life and you will listen to the caller and live out your calling.